this conference has been set up by Pope Francis to work at implementing the process that has started in the Amazon Synod to put into practice integral ecology in the Amazon territory. And Mauricio was also one of the key organizers of the Amazon Synod, and he was executive secretary of REPAM, the ecclesial network of the Amazon. So welcome, Mauricio, today. And I'm sure you also bring perspectives on land and indigenous peoples from the Amazon. And then Vijay, I don't think I need to introduce you. You've been introduced already. So welcome back. So I suggest that we do like yesterday. If you can each give an input of 5 minutes or so, and then I'll pick up on questions and points of further discussion. So I don't know. Shall we start with Rimi? Rimi, if you're
hi.
Yes.
Okay.
If your camera is not working, let's leave it. It's more important that we see, that we hear you, rather than not see you and not hear you. Oh, you've disappeared. Okay. She's back again. Rimi?
Okay. Hello, Séverine.
Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I think my network is very, very unstable. So I'll try to be as quick as possible. To be precise with time and thought, I think I'll read through my notes, which I had prepared. So while I was thinking about today's panel, especially after yesterday's discussion, I'm reminded of a conversation between two unusual.
It's broken. Vijay, I was you have her paper, so
yes, I
wonder whether
yeah.
you can read, because the connection is keeps being cut. Rimi?
Hi.
Yeah, Rimi.
I'm terribly sorry.
What I suggest is that Vijay
Hello?
read your paper, and then you can add some comments afterwards. I think that'd be safer.
I think that will be the best. Yeah, I think that will be the best.
Okay, thank you. So Vijay?
I'm sorry, Rimi, your network is bad, but it's a privilege to read your paper. So I hope I will do justice to your thoughts. We already heard the opening sentence of Rimi just now. I'll begin with that. While I was thinking about today's panel discussion, especially after yesterday's discussion, I'm reminded of a conversation between two unusual friends in a semi-historical novel called The Black Hill by Mamang Dai. The conversation is between a Mishmi chief called Kajinsha, the protector of his territory, and a priest called Father Crick, all the way from Paris in pursuit of the Tibet mission, stranded deep in Mishmi territory in the 1850s. Kajinsha tells the priest, "Land is my book." He saw the book, the Bible, which Father Crick always carried, his only possession and the only source of his solace. Kajinsha says, "Land is my book. I learn from it." And he asked the priest, "What do you think of my land?" Father Crick, who met his challenges and inspiration in these forest hills, who carried deep passion to serve his Lord and compassion for everyone he met in his journey, even when they didn't want any outsiders to come to their land. Father Crick had no answer for Kajinsha. how will he have any answers? Unlike Kajinsha, his life was not dependent on his land. In fact, maybe he was beyond any of these worldly attachments. But Kajinsha was. He was born to be so. As official records show, Father Crick was murdered in 1855, presumably by a Mishmi chief who became the first tribal person to be hanged under British colonial government in the northeast frontier of India, followed by several bloody military expeditions to the hills to teach lessons to the savages. Since then, there was no turning back even now up to date, as the region was taken over by the British colonial government and handed over to the next government. Today, there are two broad groups of indigenous people in India: the Adivasis, meaning the indigenous or the aboriginals of the land in the central Indian regions, and the other group in the far northeast of India, who call themselves as tribes, the region from where I am speaking today, and I belong to the Apatani tribe. Despite our diversities, today we share many common realities, and I have noted down a few which are relevant to this panel. First, the historical experiences of colonization, neo-colonization, and unwanted assimilation, leading to racism and socio-cultural and political marginalization of our communities. For Adivasis, it started even much before the Industrial Revolution in the Western world. As a result, today they are one of the most oppressed and subjugated populations in India. Second, development-induced dispossession. Today in India, most of the land-based struggles and displacements are concentrated in tribal and Adivasi areas, because most of the mineral resources, large-scale industries, mining industries, infrastructural works, the creation of land reserves, defense bases, etc., are happening in indigenous people's lands. Third, the governance of indigenous people and their land under Indian law and the fractured autonomy given to the community councils and its customary laws. The fourth, the internal transformation within the communities themselves. It will be futile to consider that our people are static or anti-development, or to incessantly romanticize our communities only as protectors of our environments. What has been set in motion by capitalism, modern state system, and development discourses is changing our realities and our relationship with our land as well. Some of them are necessary, one such as the land rights for women. The fifth, resistance and crackdowns. Our communities have been resisting since the time outsiders started encroaching. But with sophisticated state mechanisms and organized military strength today, there is greater suppression of resistance. Any form of resistance easily gets labeled as Maoist or terrorist or anti-national activity, which then legitimizes all forms of atrocities. The continuing of AFSPA in the Northeast, this Special Armed Forces Special Powers Act, killing and raping of men and women, hounding of our intellectuals and youth groups, village burnings, false arrests and threat of arrests of activists and our well-wishers are common scenes. There is another ongoing resistance, which is against the colonization of our minds and our epistemology. I would like to share a poem written by my late Adivasi friend, Dr. Abhay Haha, who told me that he wrote this poem at the point of frustration when time and again he was shut down by academicians from dominant castes and communities who claimed expertise on Adivasi issues, telling him about the Adivasi realities and land rights. The poem, I Am Not Your Data by Abhay. I am not your data, nor am I your vote bank. I am not your project or any exotic museum object. I am not the soul waiting to be harvested, nor am I the lab where your theories are tested. I am not your cannon fodder or the invisible worker or your entertainment at India Habitat Center. I am not your field, your crowd, your history, your help, your guilt, medallions of victory. I refuse, reject, resist your labels, your judgments, documents, definitions, your models, leaders, and patrons, because they deny me my existence, my vision, my space. Your words, maps, figures, indicators, they all create illusions and put you on pedestal from where you look down upon me. So I draw my own picture and invent my own grammar. I make my own tools to fight my own battles. For me, my people, my world, and my Adivasi self. With this, I would like to invite you all to go through several works by my fellow tribal and Adivasi scholars who are writing about our realities and specifically on land. Please see works by Victor Nazari, Dominic Leo, Abhay Khaha, Rocky Zipao, Tiplut Nongbri, Dolly Kikon, Virginius Haha, Sunmi Changmi, Mabel Gergen, Alex Akub, Akash Poyam, Kaisu Koko, and many more. To sum up, I would like to reiterate 2 points. Coming back to Pope Francis's Fratelli Tutti's teaching, we don't have to be the same or even similar to be good neighbors to each other. The second, integrity of our indigenous territory is essential. Notice the difference between the framing of terms like land and territory. Integrity of our territory is crucial for the integrity of our identity, history, culture, well-being, experience, imagination, and our unique worldview. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rimi, via Vijay. It was very, very powerful, very moving poem that questions a lot of what we are doing as academics. Rimi, are you there? You want to add a few words? Or is your connection still bad?
Hi, Séverine. I think Vijay read it out very well. I have nothing to add as of now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rimi. So I would suggest to stay with India, with Vijay, and then we move to Mauricio for the kind of the wider comparative perspectives. So Vijay, if you want to respond to Rimi or add your own voice.
I think I've spoken too much today, so I'll be brief. Even as we speak today, there is a move to denotify the land of the Onge people, a highly endangered indigenous group of Andaman Islands, to build a megacity like Singapore, as they say. Justifying the move in the face of protests, the government notification says, I quote, while the Onge maintain their distinct identity, they are no longer isolated hunters and gatherers as they were 100 years ago. And their traditional lifestyle is out of step with march of history. I repeat this. their traditional lifestyle is out of step with the march of history. This is not some colonial officer writing in the 19th or the early 20th century. It is a government agency saying this in 2021. Lots of thoughts have come up today in various presentations. I argue that when we look at the deeper, take a deeper look at these realities, when the state agencies and the corporates grab the indigenous lands and territories, we are sacrificing the future for our present greed. We are sacrificing the future for our present greed, because indigenous practices are practices of the future, but they are projected as practices of the past. The state practices, the corporate practices, the capitalist practices are outdated, outmoded, ignorant, and downright harmful and regressive. I would like to illustrate, if I can share my screen just with one slide, something that I learned from the Ashoka tribe. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Well, my mouse is not working. Excuse me.
We can see your mouse moving.
Yeah, but it's not working on the slide. Okay, maybe I can stop sharing. I'll just, for lack of time, or I'll just explain the slide as it is. Okay, this is, we talked about mythologies and knowledge systems of the indigenous tribes in Northeast India. This is something I learned from the Aka tribe and their relationship with their forests and land and realms. The Aka theology or cosmology, anthropology, whatever you call it, there is no strict separation there. Conceives the entire world in terms of domains. And these are some of the domains. Nietzsche is the village, No is the mother, which is the earth, and the father is the sky. And there are spirit domains like Shapumnolu, and Hudapuda is the domain of water and mountains, and the forest is Simbe, etc. So these are the different domains that they conceive. And human beings are in a give and take relationship with all these beings. Once again, as Rimi just said, we shouldn't be too romantic and simplify this entire notion and idealize this. But this is how people conceive the world in their ordinary day-to-day lives. And this is the symbolic system. This symbolic system comes from their mythology and their various narratives that they have. Unfortunately, I do not have time to explain the mythology behind it, but just to make a point that this is a highly sophisticated, highly developed system, which helps them to regulate and manage their land and their life around the resources that they have. So therefore, this whole notion that these practices are primitive is not well-founded at all. So just with this thought, I would like to offer a couple of concluding remarks. First of all, there is a ongoing case in the Supreme Court, and recently, last week, there were 300. Someone went to the court against cutting of 300 trees in Delhi, and the court was told these 300 trees are worth $3 million US. So if trees in a city are worth 3 million US dollars, what is the value of thousands and millions of trees among the indigenous lands? So what is the national duty? Is it to go and cut down and grab the resources from the indigenous communities, or national duty is to enable those communities who have sustained their forests and resources for centuries, and thereby given us a system where we can emulate them? Isn't it our national duty, patriotic duty of every nation? And finally, the state law always favors individual ownership against community ownership. And we have seen that when the community owns the land, it is much more sustainable, and there is a self-regulatory and self-managing system. So should we not think in these directions and learn from them? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vijay. Mauricio, you've been addressing these issues of communal land ownership as well, and the challenges of recognizing these indigenous practices and cosmologies. You were sharing with us yesterday about some positive steps that were being taken. Is someone, Vijay, can you mute yourself?
Yep,
Yes.
sure. Sorry.
Mauricio? Perfect.
Thank you, Séverine. Yes, I'd like to thank again the Laudato Si Research Institute for this privilege to talk again. Yesterday, we had an approach on human rights, and today we hope to connect with the beautiful testimonies brought by Rimi and Vijay on the spiritual approach. So I want to connect with the last example used by Vijay because it portrays how connected we are, regardless of the distance, the geographic distance, and how truly connected we are in terms of spirituality. So I wanted to start bringing a beloved Amazonian elder called Sabino from the Sarayaku people in the Ecuadorian Amazon territory. He participated in the lawsuit of his traditional people against the Ecuadorian state at the Inter-American Court for Human Rights due to the lack of a consultation process for an oil extraction prospection in their territory, in which they destroyed part of their lands, and they left hundreds of dynamite loads in their cultural territory. In this legal procedure, he was asked, as part of the juridical procedure, what was the hardest impact of this violation of their cultural and territorial rights on the Sarayaku people? And with evident sorrow in his eyes, he responded, undoubtedly, the most tragic impact has been the destruction of a sacred field, causing the abandonment of more than half of the spirits of wisdom of our ancestors, who will never be able to come back. They also say that the other elder wives of these Sarayaku people cried for 3 days on top of the tree of wisdom, which was cut down by the Petroleum Corporation, and then he died of sadness 3 months later. This experience and this example portrays the 3 elements that I brought to you yesterday: the interculturality, which needs to be a category for us to understand this diversity of our reality; the territory, the Amazon, as a theological sacred space with all of its identity, and the territoriality itself. I want to bring a phrase of the Popol Vuh, the sacred book of the Mayas, which says, they tore off our fruits, they cut off our branches, they burned out our trunks, but they could not kill our roots. I think this is what's at stake today, bringing those roots in terms of a spiritual approach so we can find new pathways. So in our experience with the Amazon Synod, we had an unprecedented consultation process in which we had the privilege to conduct throughout all of the Amazon territory. with a participation of a few thousands of indigenous representatives from at least 170 nationalities, and the unequal presence of about 20 indigenous peoples, men and women, as experts, delegates, and special guests in this official event. Their voices were strongly heard and introduced in the discernment of the Synod and its official documents. It was very beautiful to be able to organize a private meeting of the Pope. He wanted to have it only with the indigenous peoples, and I can say that there was a covenant made in terms of respect, support, and a reconciliation, which we now hope will become a part of the natural and permanent dynamic of the Catholic Church in the Amazon region, but also elsewhere, despite much resistance at all levels. In Querida Amazonia, the Pope says and brings the voices of the people, I dream of an Amazon region that can preserve its distinctive cultural riches, where the beauty of our humanity shines forth in so many varied ways. I dream of an Amazon region that can jealously preserve its overwhelming natural beauty and the superabundant life teeming in its rivers and forests. So I'd like to offer you two tripods which might help us to enter into this spiritual approach. The first tripod with three elements is the dialogue of the communal and personal conversion, which is brought by the indigenous traditions, but also connected with our own Western traditions. They talk about the new birth of the person and the new birth of the planet. This connects with our own idea of metanoia, a radical conversion of the heart, a profound transformation which starts within, and then it will eventually transform the world. The second element of this tripod, the otherness, which for the indigenous peoples is portrayed by gratuity and reciprocity. This need of recognizing of one another, the differences, and this includes the territory, the other persons, and also our creator or creators in the different approaches. And the third element of this tripod is the paresia, which in some indigenous traditions in the Amazon region, they call it to make the word done, which is a courageous going forth, going out, to recover a prophetic perspective of denouncing and responding to the cries of the people and our Mother Earth. And then a final tripod to finish my intervention, a connection in terms of the spiritual conversion with some keys in Teilhard de Chardin connected with all of the traditions and spiritualities. The first element, an incarnational mystique. We are not human beings having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. The communion with creation makes sense in human beings by the very fact of our origin and our destiny. Second element, the full interconnectedness. The more we penetrate into the remoteness and depths of matter, the more we are confused by the interrelationship of its parts. Every element of the cosmos is positively interwoven with all of the others. It is impossible to break this network. It is impossible to isolate a single one of its pieces without it fraying. The universe is sustained by its whole. This is very, very much in communion with the cosmovision of the indigenous traditions in the Amazon, and as we've heard, also in India and elsewhere. And the final element, the total love and communion with all of creation. And Teilhard says, to be able to literally tell God that one loves him, not only with one's whole body, one's whole heart, and one's whole soul, but with the whole of the universe in the process of unification, this is a prayer that can only be made in the bosom of space-time. A universal cosmic hope is the only one that can help us overcome this crisis in this particular place and in this specific moment. So we hope that the indigenous traditions continue to enlighten us, but also in a sense of interculturality, so we can as well offer what we have. This has been the experience of the Synod. This is what we are trying to achieve little by little, despite much resistance in the Amazon region, but we see how the work will done eventually. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mauricio, for this very hopeful ending. I'm aware of the time. just have a couple of minutes for questions. There was one question earlier on about lessons that could be learned from the European experience during the Industrial Revolution. There was also dispossession of land, and the enclosures happened in the UK back in the, I think, 7th, 18th, 19th century. So I wonder whether you could say a bit more about this kind of what you call a development-induced dispossession. And in the development discourses and development studies, we talked a lot about whether development is a word that we should get rid of. So would you be saying that integral ecology, for example, or is a word that should replace this development, given that how much has been misused in the name of progress? And I think about the Popularum Progressio, and the Catholic Church has always been trying to redefine development, but are we moving beyond that? And I was thinking, Mauricio, about the theme coming from the Amazon, that we need to Amazonize ourselves, Amazonizarse, talking about the Westernization, or the Westernization process. To become Western was to become developed. So are we moving into that direction, that to become Amazonian, to become Adivasi, is a way of becoming more developed? I don't know what your thoughts on that. And Rimi, don't know if you're still there.
Hi.
Can you say a few words in reaction to what Mauricio or Vijay said?
I think there are many things which one can learn from the way indigenous communities or our tribal communities live. But at the same time, as I was in my presentation also, I spoke about that, we are not so-called anti-development. We need many things. With time, everything has changed. With our full intention, or sometime we are compelled to go through those transformations, especially in today's context, when the entire discourse is the developmental discourses is defined by policymakers, or when the globalized market is entering each and every household. So Westernization, it's a process which is already set in motion, and it is very difficult to resist, or even compel someone to go backward. So definitely we are not anti-development. We need electricity, we need internet, and we need these technologies to connect. But at the same time, we want to be part of the decision making, or part of the table where these policies are being planned, and if possible, to put a small halt to those decisions or plannings that is taking place in our area. So if I talk about my community or my state, we are just offered two plates, saying choose between these two. You want hospital, or you don't want hospital. And if you want hospital, then you need to give this land for the building, for entire infrastructure, and for to connect this hospital or your town with the main city. You need to bring this. You need electricity and everything. So this is not a way that you give options to the community. So I think as of now, that's what I would say. There are, as you were saying, that if we should look beyond development, if it is possible to look beyond development, if there is something which is beyond this discourse that is so overpowering that people are not able to think outside this entire framing of how development should be, what it means.
Thank you very much, Rimi. I was thinking about a cartoon from Ecuador, exactly that, about a hospital and mining. Saying if you say no to mining, you say no to health. And it's interesting, it's the same discourse in India and Latin America, and we need to go beyond this. And that leads me to Carlos, to kind of finishing with ways of action. I mean, we've heard here a call from Rimi to have this place at the table of policy, and could this be a role of the Catholic Church or academic institutions even to bring to facilitate a place at the table? So Carlos, over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Séverine. This has been not just a useful conversation, but an important conversation that leads us to what it's the ethos of this Laudato Si Research Institute at the Campion Hall, University of Oxford. We engage with the politics of land, not in a way that is using the interconnections for just academic thinking, but actually we are very interested in making this work and make us motivate ourselves into spring into action. And I would like to highlight some of the ways in which we can connect and make the Fratelli Tutti idea of solidarity in action become something that is not just something that we can do in our own particular time, but that we can do together. And this is an invitation, so to speak, to act together, not just in the issues of land rights, but actually in all the interconnections that stem out of it. So let me share the screen here, just to give you some really a condensation of some points I suspect could be interesting to see. So, for instance, we've been talking in this presentation that this call of examining the politics of land and the insights from Asia, it leads us to think about how everything is connected, and leads us to and motivates us to act radically on the cries of the poor and the earth. In Fratelli Tutti, it is very explicit to the call to makes us all sit in a round table, regardless of where we are, and bring the socially excluded to the table, and engage in a dialogue for action, a solidarity in action of brothers and sisters all. So if we can do that, we can definitely engage in supporting the Adivasi people. One way that we think is important to do, we can get informed by spaces in which are globally connected, like spaces in the minorityrights.org, Survival International. There are wider spaces that involve a number of actors. There's 250 actors of a network called the landcoalition.org. But if you want to be more specific, we at the Laudato Research Institute have been very struck by the injustice of what happened to Father Stan Swami that we've discussed along these 2 days. And we think we definitely would like to make yourself involved in Jesuit missions, the campaign that they have, which is Stand with Stan. If you Google that, if you put it in the search bar, Jesuit missions.org, Stand with Stan, and you can also engage with us in the LSRI campion.talks.ac.uk, where we will be updating you with lots of different things. But we don't work alone, obviously. We have this is just a fraction of some of our partners. We definitely would invite you to support the work of others. that are working in these issues. I've just taken a fraction of them. You can see more on the website. And I would like to highlight perhaps a couple. So for instance, and I will just briefly get you to the actual issue of land rights with CEAMA, which encompasses lots of interesting links and stories of how we can support and engage in practice with the issue of land rights. And CAFOD, which is one of the partners of this global network at CEAMA, is also responding in a very holistic way when there's other, we've mentioned the issue of water, we've mentioned other aspects that are important to get on board. Now, if we go back to the idea that we're together, we stand together, we don't come as a research institute as a know-it-all space, or neither do we work alone. We brought you to engage in this conversation so that we can do many aspects of what we have set out as our objective, which is engage in dialogue, make research that is inspired in that dialogue. The dialogue is, it reconciles intellectual insight with the wisdom of religious traditions, and it's all about changing society. We see this world as an interconnected space, so we want our research to be inspired by your ideas, by your insights, and this insight that we get from information is one that we want to connect it with several other steps that we want to follow up. So for instance, it can serve many of these conversations. We can extend it to our engagement with faith communities, education, civil society organizations, and so forth. We're inspired obviously by this idea of our common home. And if you think about how everything is connected, land can definitely inform many of other aspects that we're working and that we're interested on. And we invite you to engage with us and with our partners to in certain roadmaps that we have, for instance, this year, which is, you will know that we have the COP26, which is a follow-up on the UN Climate Change Conference, and that may be a very unique landmark, and that will be held in Glasgow later this year in November. And of course, and in terms of the land rights, that will be a key, one of the key issues. And we definitely endorse the connection with water, with issues like what's going on in the pandemic, with COVID-19, but especially on issues of political voice and equality of rights. We want to give you opportunities to lead us and to engage with us with your wisdom as well. Finally, just so that you can see some of the aspects in which we work on, we do learn a lot from this insights. That's what we call them, like that. So we learn for action. We visualize change with you. We want to engage with you in networks. We want to engage with the dissemination and acting in partnerships and reflect together. This all for the common good of the world. And in a very Fratelli Tutti way, we just want to work together in solidarity to make a community of change makers, not just research. We're a research institute, but we want to act radically on the cries of the poor and the earth. So it's about systemic change. You see, land is not just the material aspect of it. You know that land it sustains us in so many ways that it goes way beyond the material. So in that regard, and with that note, I think that is one of the things I would like to just engage in a conversation for the future with you. If you can tap in our website, you will see that we've got different aspects of our engagement. and our materials, if you can engage us in how to improve, what we can focus on, that would be also another way of engagement. So to recap, we will definitely, perhaps in some of the material that we send afterwards for those who have registered, we would like to definitely engage in support of the Adivasi people. We would invite you, if you're interested in supporting the case of Father Stan Swami with the Jesuit mission, and engage with us, which would be a very, very fruitful thing, and we would appreciate it very much. So thank you very much. And I would like to get perhaps round up this conversation, and thank you for once more for us to engage in dialogue in this symposium, which has explored the topical issue of land rights and land governance in Asia. And we will definitely be ready to engage in other conversations on indigenous people's land, forest, and waterways. So thank you once more, and we end this call to action with a conclusion, which that is the conclusion of the event. Thank you very much.